Lydia Carter stood before the large mirror in her bedroom, staring at her reflection in disbelief. Today, she would be a bride. It was a moment she had long dreamed of. The pristine white wedding gown hugged her figure perfectly, its intricate details making her feel like she was living in a dream. Her dark brown hair was styled softly, cascading in gentle waves beneath a delicate veil. Everything was perfect, just as she had meticulously planned for over a year. Yet, something didn't feel right. Rocky, her dog, lay at her feet, gazing up at her with affectionate but anxious eyes, as if he sensed something unusual. Rocky had been by her side through high school, college, and now, as she prepared to step into married life, she had adopted him from a shelter when he was just a frail, abandoned puppy. Since then, Rocky has been her steadfast companion, always ready to protect her and give her unconditional love. Lydia turned slightly, the morning light streaming through her bedroom window, making her wedding gown shimmer. She glanced down at Rocky, her loyal companion, her eyes soft. "Do you think Gavin truly deserves me?" Lydia asked, her voice low, as though sharing a private thought. At the mention of Gavin's name, Rocky's ears perked up slightly, but he didn't move. Normally, when he heard her fiancé's name, he would rush over excitedly, as if Gavin were an important part of his world. But this time, Rocky simply watched her with a serious expression, as though he sensed something was amiss. His bright golden eyes followed Lydia with an unusual silence. Clara, Lydia's mother, stepped into the room smiling at her. "Sweetheart, the makeup artist and photographer are here. Are you ready?" "I'm ready, Mom," Lydia replied, smiling as she took one last look in the mirror before kneeling to stroke Rocky's head. "Come on, buddy. Help me make today perfect." Rocky slowly got to his feet, his aging body creaking slightly at the joints, but his eyes never left Lydia. She felt the weight of his gaze, and in that moment she knew that no matter what, Rocky would always be her most loyal friend. Irreplaceable. The next 2 hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. The house buzzed with the laughter of bridesmaids in pale pink dresses, the hurried movements of hairstylists and makeup artists, and the clicking of Lydia's mother's high heels as she coordinated the final wedding details. Throughout it all, Rocky stayed close to Lydia, but seemed less lively than usual. "Is he okay?" Clara, Lydia's mother, asked as they prepared to leave the house for the church. "He doesn't seem well today." Lydia pressed her lips together, glancing down at Rocky, then gently stroked his back. "It's probably just the commotion and all the people around, Mom." But deep down, Lydia couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Rocky had been different over the past few days. He ate less, moved slower, and spent most of his time sleeping. She had planned to take him to the vet, but with all the wedding preparations, she hadn't gotten around to it. "We need to go," Clara announced, checking her watch. "The photographer wants to take some pictures before the ceremony, and traffic might be heavy." Lydia nodded, lifting the hem of her dress carefully. "Let's go, Rocky. It's time." The drive to the church wasn't long, but throughout the journey, Lydia was overwhelmed by an inexplicable sense of unease. It wasn't doubt about her love for Gavin, or fear about the wedding itself. It was Rocky. Today, he clung to her more than usual, resting his head on her lap the entire way, something he rarely did. This unusual behavior only made Lydia more anxious, but she reassured herself that he was likely picking up on the buzz and tension of her big day. When they arrived, there was still an hour before the ceremony. The photographer suggested taking pictures of the bride first, but Rocky unexpectedly blocked Lydia, refusing to move even when she gently called him. His pleading eyes, rapid breathing, and trembling legs made Lydia realize something was very wrong. She knelt, ignoring the impatience of those around her, and placed her hand on Rocky, feeling an unusual warmth. Jenny, her best friend, checked and noticed his heart beating rapidly. Ignoring the urging of others, Lydia grabbed her phone and immediately called Dr. Coleman, her trusted veterinarian, worry etched across her face. "Hello, this is Dr. Coleman." "Hi, Dr. Coleman, this is Lydia Carter. Rocky is breathing heavily, his heart is racing, and he's acting very strange. Please, I need help right away." There was a brief pause before Dr. Coleman responded. "Isn't today your wedding day?" "Yes, but Rocky needs me," Lydia replied, her voice cracking. After hanging up, Lydia looked around at the concerned faces. Finally, her father spoke up. "You need to go. I'll handle everything here." Her mother immediately began making arrangements, while Jenny volunteered to drive. On the way, Lydia sat in the back seat, letting Rocky rest his head on her lap as she stroked his graying fur. "Lydia, do you remember the day you brought him home?" Jenny asked, trying to lighten the mood. Lydia smiled faintly. "Of course. He chewed up my favorite pair of shoes on his first day." Jenny chuckled softly. "And you couldn't even stay mad at him for a second." Lydia looked down at Rocky, her expression tender. "How could I? He's always been the best boy." Jenny glanced back at Rocky. "Oh, remember that time he chased those kids at the park? Everyone thought he was aggressive, but he just wanted to play." Lydia nodded, smiling slightly. "Yeah, he's always been a goofball. But that's what makes him special." Jenny added, "You know, he's not just a dog. To me, he's like a part of our family." Lydia's voice wavered as she gently stroked Rocky's head. "I know, and that's how I'll always remember him." The car sped along in silence, with only the sound of wind whistling through the window cracks. Jenny occasionally glanced at Lydia through the rearview mirror, her eyes filled with concern. Rocky lay on Lydia's lap, his breathing weak but still lifting his gaze to his owner, as if seeking comfort. "Lydia, you need to stay calm," Jenny said softly, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "Dr. Coleman will know what to do. Rocky's a fighter, remember?" Lydia nodded but didn't speak. Her hands trembled as she gently stroked Rocky's soft fur. I'm scared I didn't notice sooner. Maybe I missed some signs," she whispered, her voice quivering with worry. Jenny looked at her through the mirror, trying to console her. "No one blames you, Lydia. You've done everything for him. We'll get through this together." Lydia didn't reply. She simply lowered her head and placed a gentle kiss on Rocky's forehead, trying to reassure both herself and her loyal companion. Deep inside, she just prayed they would make it in time. Finally, they arrived at the clinic as quickly as they could. Dr. Coleman was already waiting. He swiftly examined Rocky, carefully listening to his faint heartbeat. "Rocky is in the early stages of heart failure. The stress today has worsened his symptoms. He's been trying to signal that he needs you." Lydia froze, her eyes widening in disbelief. No, that can't be true." She shook her head, her voice breaking as her hands instinctively tightened around Rocky. "He's been fine. He's always been healthy. How could this happen?" Tears streamed down Lydia's face as she looked at Rocky's frail body, his trusting eyes still gazing up at her. "Rocky," she choked, a wave of helplessness washing over her. "I can't let this happen to him. I can't." Dr. Coleman stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "Lydia, I know this is hard to accept, but Rocky needs you to stay calm. He still has a chance. With your care and love, he can pull through." Sobbing, Lydia ran her hand over Rocky's graying fur. "I'll do anything, anything to keep him with me longer," she said, her voice cracking but filled with determination. Dr. Coleman nodded, his eyes empathetic. "Dogs are incredibly perceptive. Rocky knows he needs help and trusts you completely." "What can we do for him?" Lydia asked, her voice trembling. "We'll start medication immediately to manage the symptoms. But given his age and current condition, he might only have a few months left." Lydia bowed her head as tears streamed down her face. "I'll stay with him. I promised I'd never leave him alone, especially not now." She looked at the doctor with unwavering resolve. "Can we start right away?" The doctor agreed. Rocky was given his first dose of medication, and Lydia knelt beside the bed, her white wedding dress fanned out around her. She quietly took notes while Jenny updated their family about the situation. Although the wedding had been postponed, Lydia's focus remained solely on Rocky, determined to keep her promise. Suddenly, her phone buzzed with a message. "How's Rocky?" Lydia bit her lip, her fingers trembling as she typed a reply. "Not good. I'm sorry about the wedding." Just seconds later, Gavin responded. "Don't worry, I'm on my way." Gavin stepped into the room after 25 minutes, still wearing his tuxedo. However, the glamorous aura was replaced with a look of deep concern. John, his best friend, followed close behind, his face tense but respectful as he stepped back to give them space. Lydia looked up at Gavin, her tear-streaked face framed by her crumpled wedding gown, now damp with tears. "Gavin, I'm so sorry. I ruined our wedding day. Rocky, he's not doing well," she choked out, her voice breaking. Gavin gently wiped the tears from her cheeks, his eyes filled with love. "Hey, don't blame yourself. You didn't ruin anything. What matters today is you, and Rocky is part of our family. I understand." Lydia lowered her head, her voice trembling. "But if he doesn't make it, I don't know what I'll do, Gavin." Gavin clasped her hands firmly, his gaze steady with determination. "We'll do everything we can to help him. You don't have to face this alone. Rocky has always been there for you, and now we'll be here for him." Lydia looked up at him, her teary eyes glimmering with a faint hope sparked by his words. "You're really not upset with me? For walking away from the ceremony?" Gavin smiled softly, lowering his forehead to rest gently against hers. "Lydia, I love you. Not just for how beautiful you are, or because of today. I love you for your kind heart. And I promise, we'll get through this together. Rocky won't have to suffer alone, and neither will you." Gavin's words made Lydia burst into tears again, but this time it was a cathartic release, a comfort she hadn't felt before. She rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the safety and assurance he provided. With him by her side, she knew she wasn't alone. Suddenly, Gavin's friend John spoke up. "I have an idea. We could hold the wedding right here," he said with a light smile. Jenny quickly added, "The officiant has already agreed to come, and everyone supports it." Lydia glanced down at Rocky, her loyal companion, who was struggling to lift his head to look at her. His eyes seemingly reassured her that he was still by her side. She turned to Gavin, a faint smile forming on her lips. "Let's do it here. Rocky has been a part of every important moment in my life. He deserves to be part of this one too." And so, just a few hours later, Lydia Carter and Gavin Anderson stood in the middle of the small clinic room, where soft, muted lighting lent a simple, serene beauty to the moment. Lydia's wedding gown, far from its pristine elegance, was wrinkled and stained. But she didn't care. Her eyes, red from tears, gazed down at Rocky, lying quietly at her feet. The small bow on his collar made her throat tighten with emotion, her heart swelling with feelings she had never experienced so profoundly before. For years, Lydia had dreamed of a perfect wedding. A grand venue adorned with lavish decorations, hundreds of eyes on her as she walked down the aisle in a sparkling gown, and soft music guiding her steps toward Gavin. But now, standing in this modest room with only a handful of loved ones, Lydia realized the true essence of today. It wasn't the fresh flowers or the crowded well-wishers that made a wedding perfect. It was the love, loyalty, and genuine understanding enveloping everyone here. She looked at Rocky, memories flooding back of how he had been with her since he was just a puppy. He had run alongside her on forest trails, sat quietly by her during her saddest nights, and gazed at her with unwavering, unconditional love. Rocky wasn't just a dog. He was family, a silent witness to every important moment in Lydia's life. He was there when we met, when we dated, and when you proposed to me, Lydia had whispered to Gavin earlier. He needs to be here for this moment too. As the vows echoed through the small room, Lydia felt the sacredness of the moment like never before. It wasn't just the moment she became Gavin's wife, but also a reminder that family was about love and connection, not outward perfection. When Gavin gently leaned down to give her the first kiss as her husband, a soft bark from Rocky filled the air. Lydia smiled through her tears, feeling as though her loyal companion was offering his blessing. The small room burst into laughter, but in Lydia's heart, it was laughter intertwined with love and gratitude. For Gavin, for Rocky, and for this very moment where everything that truly mattered was present. Family and close friends gathered around, their eyes glistening with emotion as they witnessed Lydia and Gavin exchange their sacred vows. The modest space of the veterinary clinic was suddenly filled with warmth and love, each word spoken resonating deeply with everyone present. Every phrase carried the weight of sincerity, moving many to quietly wipe away tears. But eventually, a week later, Rocky passed away in the arms of Lydia and Gavin after a day filled with joy. He ate heartily, played with his favorite toy, and basked in the care and affection of those who had always considered him family. Rocky closed his eyes peacefully. The room seemed to fall silent, save for the faint, labored breaths of Rocky. Lydia sat close to him, her hand gently stroking his soft, graying fur. Her gaze was filled with love and pain, an ache she couldn't put into words. Rocky, her faithful companion for over a decade, was slipping away. His cloudy eyes looked up at her, once bright and lively at the sound of her voice, now reflecting only peace and a trace of sorrow. Lydia leaned down, her face close to his, her voice trembling but tender. "You've always been here, from the days when I was just a young, naive girl to when I found love. You've seen it all. You were my comfort, my rock, whenever I fell." Rocky slowly closed his eyes, as if he understood every word. His tail, too tired to wag, twitched slightly, as though comforting her one last time. She felt his breathing slow, and bit by bit, Lydia realized the moment of farewell was near. She couldn't hold back her tears, letting them fall onto Rocky's fur. Yet even as his strength faded, he seemed to be trying to tell her that he would always be with her, just in a different place, where pain and exhaustion no longer existed. Rocky looked up at Lydia one last time, his eyes full of love and gratitude. Like a silent farewell, he let out a soft sigh, a final breath, and slowly drifted into eternal sleep. Lydia felt the small body in her hands grow still, and an overwhelming emptiness consume her. But amid the pain, she realized that Rocky had passed, peacefully, surrounded by the love of her and Gavin. In that moment, Lydia understood that love never truly fades, it simply changes shape. Rocky would forever live in her heart, an irreplaceable part of the most cherished memories of her life. A month after Rocky's passing, Lydia and Gavin decided to visit the animal rescue shelter to adopt a new dog. They had grown accustomed to having a four-legged friend by their side, and Rocky's absence left their home feeling incomplete. "Do you think we're ready?" Gavin asked, gripping Lydia's hand tightly. She nodded, looking at the collar she had kept from Rocky. "We can't live without the love of a dog." No. At the shelter, they stopped in front of a kennel where Buddy, an elderly golden retriever, lay quietly. With a gentle gaze and graying fur, Buddy looked at them as if he had been waiting for them all along. "He's been here for a few months," the shelter worker said. "Because of his age, no one wants to adopt him, but he's very sweet." Lydia sat down, gently reaching her hand through the kennel bars. Buddy lifted his head, approached her, and exhaled a long breath, his nose touching her hand. Lydia turned to Gavin, her eyes full of emotion. "Can we adopt him?" Gavin smiled and nodded. That night, Buddy found his place in their home, lying peacefully on Rocky's old bed. Lydia sat beside Gavin, watching Buddy sleep soundly, and said, "We don't know how much time we'll have with him, but as Rocky taught us, it's not the quantity, but the quality of love." Months after bringing Buddy home, Lydia and Gavin felt as though a part of their family had returned. They had become accustomed to having Rocky by their side, sharing everyday moments with their loyal dog. Therefore, adopting Buddy wasn't just about filling the void in their hearts. It was also because they understood that the love for a dog has no limits. Buddy brought Rocky back to life in small actions, making Lydia and Gavin feel as though Rocky was still there. Every morning, Buddy would run around the yard, wagging his tail happily when he saw Lydia and Gavin come outside, just like Rocky used to do. When Lydia sat down on the sofa, Buddy would curl up beside her, resting his head on her lap and looking up at her, just like Rocky had done when she needed comfort. And when Gavin stood up, Buddy would quietly get up and follow, as if reminding them that they would always have each other. These small actions not only warmed their home, but also brought comfort, making them feel that Rocky's love continued to live on through Buddy. After adopting Buddy and feeling the change in deep emotion from the love they gave him, Lydia and Gavin decided to not only continue caring for one dog, but also to help many other dogs in need of a home. They began doing charity work, organizing fundraisers, and calling on the community to support animal shelters. The fundraisers not only raised money, but also created a network of love, helping abandoned dogs find new families with owners willing to offer love and care. Lydia and Gavin had become not just dog owners, but also protectors, bringing hope to other dogs and helping them find a safe refuge and the love they deserved. A year later, Lydia and Gavin welcomed the greatest joy of their lives, their little son. Happiness seemed to fill their home as Lydia looked at Gavin with a bright smile, while Buddy, their loyal dog, wagged his tail joyfully beside them. Their life, since Buddy had come into their home, had become more complete than ever, and now with the arrival of their baby, that joy was even more fulfilling. As Lydia held their son in her arms, she happened to notice a small birthmark on his foot, identical to the one Rocky had. It felt as if Rocky had returned, not in the form of a dog, but in the body of their beloved son. Lydia felt a lump in her throat, a wave of emotions swelling up, as if Rocky was still there, always watching over them, continuing to live through their son. In the days that followed, the boy grew, and every time Buddy lay next to him as he slept, Lydia felt as though the swirling circles of love and memories had brought them together. Lydia and Gavin's small family was now filled with laughter, joy, and love. The love Rocky had left for them, and the love Buddy continued to give them every day. Together, they lived happily, with special marks left in their hearts by both Rocky and Buddy. The story of Lydia, Gavin, their dog Rocky, and Buddy, as it came to an end, taught us a lesson. Love and detachment are not dependent on time, but on the meaningful moments we share together. Whether through small actions or memories of loyal friends, love always finds a way to continue, overcoming every loss. And most importantly, it is about cherishing and loving what we have, for every moment is precious,